Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Penna Dexter.
Thank you very much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. I am Penna Dexter, and this is our Friday weekend edition. I have in studio with me Kelly Shackelford, President and CEO of Liberty Institute, and Jeremy Dyes, Senior Counsel at Liberty Institute. So, as always, we will address the issues of religious liberty. And we also have a lot of presidential politics to talk about today. Not only Hillary Clinton's email scandal, which is intensifying, and all three of us said last week that in our minds we would rather see the campaigns be about the issues. But it is an issue when someone sort of oversteps their bounds in the way that they handle their office. And I think there's a sense of arrogance there that probably is telling. We don't need arrogance in the White House. We've had enough of it. So we will discuss presidential politics. Later in the program, we'll be joined by Arina Grossu from Family Research Council, because she's going to tell us about all the rallies that will be taking place this weekend on Saturday across the nation in front of Planned Parenthood facilities. And this is an easy way, if you can just take some time out of your Saturday to make your voice heard, especially in light of number 7 of these Planned Parenthood, these videos that expose Planned Parenthood as selling body parts. So that will be later in the program. But first, we want to kind of get into presidential politics a little bit, because things are heating up. And so, Kelly, let me just come to you first, because we traded emails a little bit about Hillary's emails. And we have noticed that yesterday there was a hearing. One particular judge was a little frustrated, I think, with the situation, because the Clinton campaign and Clinton's people are they've stonewalled, but then they've said that they've been very forthcoming. And it's really the problem here is a personal email account that was used for official business. It doesn't get to be a personal email account, according to this judge, because it was her only email account. Am I correctly assessing that?
Yeah, I mean, you've got a judge now essentially forecasting where this is going, and you know, there are a lot of problems on the Hillary Clinton email situation. If you ever watch what happens with federal investigations, you'll find that most people, whatever they were originally being investigated for, the thing they end up being convicted for that's easier to convict them of is they're trying to cover things up. That what's called obstruction of justice. It's very easy to be nailed for that. And so, for instance, if it comes to be known that she got rid of the emails, obstruction of justice.
Okay.
If she asked somebody else to do it, obstruction of justice. I mean, almost everything that we're hearing, it's almost assured that that's going to be an issue for her, and they don't even have to prove the original, underlying violation, and that's what happens to most people in this. So there are so many choices now of how they could go after her that I think she's in a lot of trouble. She didn't answer the direct question on that from a reporter who specifically asked, "Did you wipe the servers clean?" And
that was a ridiculous answer.
Yeah, so she's in real trouble, and the only thing that's sort of, and I know you've got an article posted on this on the pointofview.net, is, and And I had the same thought. I would never have written anything like what Monica Crowley wrote, but Monica Crowley's saying the only reason this is happening is because President Obama wants this to happen. I do think that it's been pretty obvious when you look at all the investigations, the IRS improprieties. You look at what was the gun program? What's the name of that again?
Fast and Furious.
Yeah, Fast and Furious. There's a long list of these that nothing ever happened, even though they clearly should have been fully investigated and there should have been prosecutions, because the president basically said, I control the Attorney General and the Justice Department, and I'm saying no. And so I do think that part of Monica Crowley's article is correct, that none of these investigations go if the president doesn't want them to go. So
he's in the driver's seat.
This is going, the leaks, everything. I think that she's got one good point on that. I think she might take it too far. I think that's all we know, but it makes for definitely very interesting and surprising politics. I mean,
it is.
I mean, and I think back to right when President Obama took over, and you had that conviction of the Black Panthers for intimidating people who were trying to vote. And then as soon as he came in and brought his Attorney General in, they completely wiped that case out, even though they already had a conviction. I mean, they were already, way down the road. And so that's the way the justice, and that is, by the way, this is very unusual. Under every president, Democrat, Republican, the Justice Department had somewhat of a protection from being politicized. And while the top political appointees would have their political appointee kind of approaches, there were people down the line that were career people that couldn't be touched, and they would make sure that the law was being followed under all presidents. And that's really changed in this Justice Department under this president, which then brings you to say things like Monica Crowley says, that, look, he stopped all these investigations that clearly there were a lot of evidence. The fact that this one hasn't been stopped and it's leaking day by day tells you something.
So, but we have posted two pieces that Kelly has just referred to. Let me just send you to pointofview.net when you're ready. And if you're interested in reading these, one has to do with this hearing yesterday with Judge Emmett Sullivan, who was a Clinton appointee, but he sounds pretty frustrated with her. He talked about her as a government employee. The way she handled her email violated policy, if not the law. He said she violated government policy by storing official messages on a private server. Normally, government officials' private accounts cannot be searched under the open records law, which is what the suit is on this particular case. But this, he said, was an unusual situation because she did violate the policy. So she's put them in this predicament. And then Hillary herself maintains that it was legal to use this private server and that the government has a dysfunctional system. So again, she always goes back and blames her accusers and others for the things she does. And she had no other account. The only account she used was this personal one that was at her home. And so in this lawsuit, this particular lawsuit that we're addressing, it has to do with her assistant, her aide, Uma Abedin. And she is a longtime aide. She got to work for Hillary part-time and work for a private nonprofit. And that is being investigated. Was that even kosher? So that's that. And then the other article that we've put up is Why Obama is Torpedoing Hillary Clinton by Monica Crowley. It's the Washington Times piece, and she's got her own theories about that. We can talk about it later. But Jeremy, I know that you've seen this theory by Monica, and the idea that that at this point, 18 months before the end of his presidency, President Obama is concerned about his legacy, as all presidents are. He's certainly been transformational. He continues to try to push the envelope to turn us into a top-down totalitarian government. And I guess he doesn't see Hillary as continuing his legacy. And so perhaps this is why he is allowing all of this to go forward.
Yeah, well, look, if all that proves to be true, are we at all surprised? I mean, if the president will use his office and the administration will use their full powers to tell Little Sisters of the Poor that they've got to provide abortion-inducing medications, aren't we at all surprised that he'd use the DOJ for other political purposes?
More on that right after this. We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
A few decades ago, marriages were the foundation of what many commentators referred to as the traditional family. Now, marriages and families are taking some very unfamiliar shapes and orientations due to different views of marriage and family. Americans are not exactly sure what to think about these dramatic changes in marriage and family. On the one hand, they believe that marriage and family are very important. One survey found that readers actually rated their relationship to their spouse as the single most important factor in their personal happiness. On the other hand, Americans are much less sanguine about other people's marriages and families. I call this the Lake Wobegon effect, where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and all the children are above average. In other words, their marriage and family are fine, but the rest of the marriages and families are not. The Mass Mutual Family Value Study found that a majority pointed to their family as the greatest source of pleasure, but it also found that a majority rated the family in the United States as only fair or poor. Almost 6 in 10 expected it to get worse in the next 10 years. The survey came to the same conclusion I mentioned earlier. It said, quote, Americans seem to see the family in decline everywhere but in their own home, unquote. You know, similar results have been found in many other nationwide polls. A Gallup poll found that Americans believe that the family is worse off today than it was 10 years ago, and they believe that it would be worse off in the future. This belief that the future will be worse than the present appears to be true not only for the family, but for other social issues as well. So while most Americans feel good about their own marriage and family, they're concerned about other marriages and families as well. Perhaps their own experience is closer to reality. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Prayer is a powerful weapon. From Provident Films and Affirm Films comes War Room in theaters August 28. Rated PG. More information at warroomthemovie.com.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Welcome back to Point of View. I'm Penna Dexter, and I've got the two Liberty Institute attorneys in studio with me, two of them, Kelly Shackelford and Jeremy Dyes. And we are talking presidential politics. And, of course, we can talk about Donald Trump a little bit later, but I think the point I want to make with him is that he's certainly gaining a lot of attention right now and has a lot of support. But a lot of us look at it and say this, as it gets closer to the primaries and the beginning of next year when things all start to happen, I think just from looking at many presidential elections over my lifetime, that people will start to get very realistic about it and he will lose support. And then we have to say who will be the natural inheritor of the Trump people. Some of the Trump people are fed up people that have been involved for a long time. They're fed up with Republicans because they just see them breaking their promises all the time. Others are new people, and I think there are a lot of those. There are young people, and he has tapped into to a sentiment of discontent about the country, and he's not afraid to say anything, and a lot of people are very respectful of that and happy about that. But if it does, I mean, maybe he'll end up the nominee, but in my heart of hearts, I don't think so. And so there's a natural inheritor of some of that sentiment. And we have to look at who this might be. I mean, there are other people out there that are conservatives that Christians would like. I mean, they're the Mike Huckabees of the world and the Rick Santorums of the world who have run before and conservatives have gone after. But I think there's a sense in which there's a real Tea Party economic conservative part of this that would not go for a Huckabee or a Santorum because they tend to, and even a Rubio, they tend to favor bigger government in many cases out of a compassion. So who is it? And, who's out there that would really, maybe a Scott Walker could be one of them. But he just was exposed for giving big government money to a stadium. So,
Yes.
Some of the things that are part of his background, he has been the governor in a very, very liberal area. And so people can it's about who might be the inheritor and a possible nominee.
Well, I think there are at least 14 other possible inheritors right now, so we've got certainly got a pretty decent bench. And I think it would behoove all of the bench to be saying, rather than taking shots at the guy on top who's actually hitting some singles or maybe some doubles here and there and sometimes striking out, let's start pitching against the other side here and keeping our common focus upon what is wrong for this country, and that is any form of liberal leadership that would undermine the core foundational freedoms of our country, rather than debating about a lot of things. But I think you're right to say that there's a lot of people that just say, look, if it's Trump or if it's somebody else, they're tapping into this. We're so sick and tired of even our own party not listening to what we say. We voted this way to get change. We had no change. We voted this way to remove those people and say, okay, this time you're going to do it? Okay, great. You fool me once, fool me twice, don't fool me a third time here. So I think we're at the point now of people just saying, I'm almost fed up with the system. I'm willing to vote for almost anybody who's willing to at least say something. I don't care if they actually believe it or if they've actually got the ideological convictions that lay behind the rhetoric. They just simply say, I want someone to be saying it and taking that up to the case. Now, who inherits that if and when Donald Trump falls out of that? I think there's good people like Ted Cruz who could very easily step into that role, who's something of the same sort of, I'm willing to say what needs to be said, but I have the intellectual capacity and the ideological convictions behind what I'm saying to be able to carry that into fruition. I think we had an article that maybe posted here or there that is a really good understanding of, what does Cruz stand for? And don't underestimate this guy. He's not only smart, he's smart politically as well. But there are other people that probably could stand in that gap as well. The point being, I think you hear enough people saying, we're sick of not being heard. If you don't do something about it soon, we're going to send Donald Trump up there, and how we go like that.
Really? We have two pieces up at pointofview.net. Trump and allies plot path to victory. And when you read that article, ladies and gentlemen, you will see that there is a path to victory for Donald Trump. And I'm not mitigating that or belittling that idea at all. I think everyone needs to be aware of that. But there's also a piece up there underestimating Ted Cruz. Don't, because he's been, I think he's been fairly quiet in a sense. We watched him run for Senate in Texas, and he went from like 2% support to winning the U.S. Senate seat. And we watched that. So to me, I've been a little surprised how quiet he's been. But I think what he's doing is just very, very methodically speaking about the issues with his great intellect. And he's also not ever opposing Donald Trump's people or, the things that they think, because he actually has been a great opponent of the establishment in the Republican Party, and he's put his career on the line a couple of times to oppose them. So, all of that, sometimes you just have to play things out. Meanwhile, he's been very, very quickly raising money. So, Kelly, talk about that part of it, because that's an important part. There's in
the articles you mentioned, one I'd mentioned, the one on Trump, that I think is fascinating, is they talk about evangelicals and whether they can be brought around to vote for Trump. And the quote they say regularly, they say that they believe the best president should be someone who exhibits, these are evangelicals, someone who exhibits family stability, faith in God, business ethics, and personal humility. Characteristics that don't exactly apply to a man on his third marriage who admits he has never sought God's forgiveness and regularly boasts about his wealth and his conspicuous consumption. And I thought that was a pretty good way to sort of summarize his problem with evangelicals, which will be big in Iowa. And then later in the article, it's a quote from Michelle Bachmann's campaign. One of her workers has said, talking about Trump, saying it's not going to happen right away, but eventually Trump will look like old news and obnoxious. So I do think there's that, there's that group of people. But, I mean, there's plenty of evangelicals that they're not saying, they would say, I'm not vouching for Trump's character, but I do appreciate, there's just a part of me that appreciates what he's saying, that the establishment who's forced Bob Dole, John McCain, Mitt Romney down everybody's throat and was about to do the same with Jeb Bush, which is just a losing proposition, somebody is standing in their way and socking them in the teeth. And so, there's people that say good. And I think most people don't expect it to last, but most people, me included, didn't expect him to really even run. So I think there's been a lot of surprise to this. But the other thing that you mentioned, and I would encourage people to read these articles at pointofview.net, and we just put up, I think, one. There have been a ton of articles this week, all on Ted Cruz, from liberal, conservative. I think the one we have posted is Al Hunt, who's a liberal. But what they say is this guy is really smart. He is really managing this thing well. And they're looking and saying, Al Hunt is saying he's going to win the Republican nomination. Now, Al Hunt then says then he'll lose because, liberals are going to win the election. But I do think there's been, and they haven't done this about anybody else this week, but there's been article after article by different sort of people that really watch this, predicting that Ted Cruz is sort of like that horse that's right behind the winner and is hidden and nobody's seen until at that last stretch he's going to come out and pass everybody is kind of what they're describing. So very interesting. I don't think anybody knows, but it is really interesting that so many different people from so many different perspectives were sort of pushing those same kinds of arguments, saying that the Trumps and the Ben Carsons will fade back, and the guy who really represents that, who has the money, the intelligence, the staffing, and everything else in place to take advantage is Ted Cruz.
And if you also look at what's actually happening on the ground, Iowa's for good or ill, it's a very telling indicator also. Not all the media is not the indicator. The media is all centered around the kind of phenomenon, and I think is what it is, of Donald Trump. But if you look at on the ground right now, the people who are actually going to be voting in the caucus, who are going to actually have the discussions and lead those debates, what just happened this past week? Well, Steve Deace endorsed Ted Cruz. Well, Steve Deace, if you don't know, he's a pretty strong deal in terms of the media in Iowa, and especially of the very conservative and even more subset of that, the religious conservative vote in Iowa. So, and as I was reading one of these articles that mentioned that they've been trying to convince Steve Deace to provide that the campaigns have since 2012.
He doesn't normally endorse because he is a media guy.
Right. And really, I would say there's two people in Iowa. There's Steve Deace and there's Bob Vanderplatz. Mm-hmm. And to have one of those people come out, I guess it was 2 days ago or whatever for Ted Cruz, that was one of the stories that was written. So that took a lot of groundwork with a lot of people. That's somewhat of a prediction. A guy who doesn't want to lose his credibility, like a Karl Rove, Steve Deace is not going to say that if he doesn't think there's a campaign structure about to happen in Iowa in the election where Ted Cruz has a really good chance.
What do you think? Could you swallow a Donald Trump? Who could you swallow? 800-351-1212. We'll take your calls after this.
Hank Aaron and Tony Gwynn. Even if you're not a big baseball fan, there's a chance that you've heard each of those names. Hammer and Hank hit 755 home runs. Gwynn, a contact hitter, better known for singles and doubles than the big bomb. But both men are in the Hall of Fame, and any team would have been glad to have them. Point of View needs a team of partners, including both Aaron's and Gwynn's. Are you a home run giver, or can you contribute a single? If you and every listener this week gave just $5 today, we could pay our program costs for about the next 3 years. 3 years, just $5. Step up to the plate today. Click the Donate Now button at pointofview.net, pointofview.net, or send $5 to Point of View, Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Box 30, Dallas 75221. Do your part, $5. Support the winning team at Point of View. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Penna Dexter.
I'd love to be sort of a dispassionate observer of this presidential race, but there's so much at stake that I cannot be, because it is very entertaining, especially right now with the Trump phenomenon out there. And, you know, he could flame out. And in a sense, when the media elevates a candidate, the media can get tired of that candidate too. So we will see. And I'd love to hear from you, ladies and gentlemen. We are opening the phones. Could you handle Trump? Would you be able to support him? Or do you just love him? We'd love to hear from you, 800-351-1212, and also who would you think the natural inheritor of Trump supporters would be. We were talking about sort of the rise of the attention on Ted Cruz that we've seen this week in articles and from some serious endorsements, and he does have money. And I know that there's an event he's putting on. Is it tonight?
It's
Kelly,
tonight
in
yeah.
Iowa.
Friday night in Iowa.
It's music to our ears that a candidate would do something like that.
Yeah, I hope this is something that the type of thing that candidates really think of creatively to do. What is being done is they're bringing in the very people that I think almost all of us have heard of. You know, the Kleins, you know, the Bakers from Oregon, Barronelle Stutzman, the grandmother, 72-year-old grandmother, the florist from Washington, the couple, Mennonite couple, the ministers who were told that they had to marry, you know, 2 men or 2 women in their church, Sergeant Monk, Philip Monk, just a whole list of these people that everybody have heard about. They're having a rally tonight, or Ted Cruz, I guess, is hosting this rally and having all these people from around the country come in who have been victims of these types of religious discrimination, and they're going to each sort of tell their story. And so I think it's a great idea. And they're doing it in conjunction with the Iowa Fair. I mean, it's right there nearby, and so hopefully they're expecting thousands of people. And I think it'll bring more attention to what's going on out there. This is, as we've talked about before, they did the last sort of survey they did. This was the number one issue for evangelicals in the presidential election. It wasn't foreign policy. It wasn't abortion. It was religious freedom. And so to see candidates start to actually talk about this and to highlight real cases of what's going on, I think is a great thing, because it'll cause other candidates to talk about it, and then they'll have to address the issue.
Very interesting to think about Donald Trump on religious liberty. I don't even think it's an issue for him. I haven't heard him talk about it at all. He has definitely recently become pro-life, and most of his issues are having to do with the economy. And so the people that are bringing attention to this, and as you said, Jeremy, earlier, this is one of the ways in which our government has been violating the Constitution, infringing upon our rights, and setting the stage for just government control of our entire, all aspects of our lives through their attacks on religious liberty. So it is the number one campaign issue, even though probably most of the country doesn't know it.
Absolutely. And I think what it does well for Senator Cruz is I discussed this last week when I was here for Point of View, to kind of show, hey, I was in this game before I got into politics. This is who I am. And if there are any candidates right now, I think there are some others like Bobby Jindal and others that's who they are, right? They're kind of the quintessential conservative, religious conservative. But I think Cruz is the one that has the most skin in the game prior to getting into politics, and perhaps was even the issue that kind of motivated him into it. So it's very natural for his campaign to be talking about these issues. But I'll also note that he's almost the only campaign that's talking about these issues. Yeah, other people kind of mention them once in a while because they're in the talking points, and they're okay, you got to get this in for that key demographic. This just emanates from a guy like Ted Cruz because he's been in it. He's litigated these cases. He's argued about these things for a long time, and thankfully we've been able to be along for some of those issues as well at Liberty Institute. But Sergeant Monk, Kelly mentioned, is one of our clients, and he's there as well. And there are others of our clients that are going to be there. They're just not going to be on the stage. I know of at least one who's going to be there that is not on the stage. But I also know that someone in this room is not going to be there, but is going to be represented there by video. Maybe Kelly can give us a little preview of what this is going to be like.
Kelly, tell us.
Well, I'm just setting up. They asked me to set up sort of the video of what's happening in the country, and sort of what they're going to hear from in the night. And so I just talked about what's going on with religious freedom around the country, and said you're going to hear from these type of people tonight. And then I pointed out that before he'd ever run for office, that Ted Cruz was one of our volunteer attorneys, and talked about that, the Mojave Desert case.
Right.
And so it's irony of all ironies to me that in the midst of this happening, we just picked up, in fact, people who watch Fox and Friends tomorrow morning might see us on Fox and Friends tomorrow morning, because we just picked up a new case in Iowa about a memorial that's under attack in Iowa. So talk about, is this really happening? Is this going on? I mean, right as you hold a rally, boom, right there, not too far away, you have another attack on another veterans memorial. And, of course, we've had a number of those cases where crosses or religious symbols are being attacked, and the veterans memorials are being attacked because they have any sort of religious imagery, which most veterans memorials do have religious imagery.
We have featured the cross cases on Point of View on our website today. We've put up the picture, well, actually an article, Kelly and Jeremy, and we meant to mention this last week, that Henry Sandos, who was the man who was sort of commissioned to take care of the Mojave Desert Cross over the years when it was embattled, and you finally won that case, and with Ted Cruz's help, as you mentioned, at the Supreme Court. But he was the caretaker, and Henry Sandos did this into his elderly old age, and he finally died. Is he still survived by his widow?
He is. Yeah, Wanda's still alive.
Okay, so I've met him because you had him at one of your events here in Dallas. But what a great way to honor him. And so we're putting that article on our website. Also, the case with regard to the Bladensburg Cross in Maryland. And you might want to just describe that case a little bit, because that one, to me, is just unbelievable that these crosses are challenged. They honor our veterans.
The Bladensburg Cross is in Maryland, Prince George's County, Maryland, and it is the very first World War I memorial on U.S. soil. And it is representative of 49 soldiers, sailors, or service members that died in World War I from that area. And it was put up there primarily led by the mothers of those who fell, but it was picked up because that campaign was kind of losing some steam. It was picked up by the American Legion as well. So we're going back to 1922 when this started. It was actually erected finally in 1925. And it's been standing there really kind of minding its own business without anybody being bothered by it for, well, almost 90 years now.
It's actually inspired a lot of people.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And in one case, we have a letter. This is really fascinating. We have a letter from one of the moms who wanted to put this up there. Happens to be the mother of the first sailor to have died in World War I from America. She sent a letter to her senator. And I can't quote it exactly, but she effectively said, and I think we have this on our website somewhere, but she said, look, my son died over there in France. I can't visit his gravestone. I consider this cross my son's gravestone. And so for close to 90 years, women like that, and I'm sure her children and her grandchildren have been following and going to that memorial to honor those who have fallen, who have provided for our freedoms. The American Legion has for 90 years been holding patriotic events around this cross, this memorial that is on the grounds. It was originally on private property, was transferred to the state because the state had to put in some highways, and they left it standing there. They put the highways around it. In fact, there are like 3 highways that are around it. People go by this quite often and are inspired by it because people are inspired when we honor those who fought for our freedoms. And along comes some of these seculars groups that say, now I'm offended by that. And they're trying now to undo about 90 years worth of history where this memorial has not bothered anybody for 90 plus years. And suddenly someone has been offended by the fact that we would honor those who have fallen to fight for our freedoms in such a way. And so thankfully we're involved in this.
What's next on it?
Right now we're waiting for the judge, I think, to rule on our summary judgment motion. Which means that if he rules in our favor, the case is over, we win. And that seems to be kind of where things are moving along. We're so grateful for the help of law firms like Jones Day on a case like this, who have just led the charge in helping us defend the memory of these men who gave the ultimate sacrifice in our country, and the mothers and children and the American Legion, this very huge national veterans association, the American Legion, who've fought for 90 plus years now to honor the memory of these men and women. And that's just one of hundreds of these memorials across the country. And all of them have stories like that. How many other memorials are out there that those who survived these service members go to and say, I can't visit my son's grave in XYZ country because it's so far over there, even in today when we can get there easily? How many go there to say, this is my son's gravestone, this is where I'm going to honor him, and then hold rallies every year to remember the fallen and to perpetuate this idea that says it is good to provide self-sacrifice to support freedom in this country? It's a great honor for us to be able to represent them.
If we lose one, we could end up, that could be a precedent to lose all of them, and we do not want to strip our country of these memorial crosses. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I guess it's Fox and Friends in the morning.
Most likely, yeah. That's what I saw
Keep your eye out.
A few minutes ago.
You'll see somebody, I don't know which attorney from Liberty Institute, will We'll be there talking about another cross case. We are taking your calls right after this.
The release of videos by the Center for Medical Progress exposing Planned Parenthood's participation in the trafficking of baby body parts warrants criminal investigation. The Heritage Foundation summed it up by pointing out 3 ways in which Planned Parenthood may be violating the law. First, we must ask, is Planned Parenthood receiving too much money in exchange for the body parts of unborn children? Planned Parenthood spokespersons say that any payment the organization receives for fetal tissue is reimbursement for what they do to process and transport it. If the organization receives compensation in excess of actual costs, it's illegal. But the videos of conversations with Planned Parenthood officials indicate its desire to maximize revenue. With one doctor taped joking, "I want a Lamborghini." The second question the Heritage Foundation asks is, do Planned Parenthood affiliate doctors change abortion procedures in order to better collect tissue from aborted children? Again, it is illegal to do this, and there are lots of statements that suggest this is happening in these videos. In the first one, Dr. Deborah Nucatola, Planned Parenthood's Senior Director for Medical Services, says of this practice, "So then, you're just kind of cognizant of where you put your graspers, and I'm going to see if I can get it all intact." Related to this is another question. Are some Planned Parenthood affiliates performing illegal partial birth abortions? This involves partially delivering the baby either head first or breech, and then killing the child before final delivery. Partial birth abortion is illegal in the United States. The law that makes it illegal was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court. But partial birth abortion allows the abortionist to deliver an intact body for research. There were several mentions in the videos of Planned Parenthood's ability to meet these requests and also provide larger parts like the calvarium or head. Dr. Nucatola told the Center for Medical Progress that when a baby's head is requested, some Planned Parenthood doctors turn the baby for a breech presentation, providing it a better chance that it will not be damaged during the abortion. Obviously, this is dangerous to the mother and is in violation of the law. If Planned Parenthood is doing these things, all states and our federal government should stop funding it. The organization famously claims that only 3% of its health services are abortion services. Even the Washington Post gave this claim 3 Pinocchios, saying Planned Parenthood is misleading the public and using meaningless and incomplete comparisons to make their argument. Planned Parenthood comes up with this claim by unbundling all of its services except abortion. Planned Parenthood clinics provide things like pap smears, birth control prescriptions, testing for sexually transmitted infections, vaccines for human papillomavirus. Several may be provided in one appointment, but they are counted as separate services. Everything associated with the abortion is counted as one service. Taxpayers should not be made to fund this charade. For Point of View, I'm Penna Dexter.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Welcome back to Point of View. It's our weekend edition. I'm Penna Dexter. Jeremy Dyes and Kelly Shackelford are here, and as one writer said, the 2016 Republican primary has turned into a puzzle about how to deal with Donald Trump. And we want to know how you are dealing with Donald Trump. What do you think about it? Let's go to James, first of all, in the state of Georgia. Oh, we just lost James. Okay. Let's go to Eileen in South Carolina. Hi, Eileen.
Hi, Penna. Yeah, I was just thinking that Donald Trump seems to be a secular Ted.
You think?
Well, roughly Ted Cruz. They both stand for what they stand for. They have strong beliefs. I support Ted Cruz, but I also am happy that Donald Trump is in the race because he's making people get men again or be manly again. We've become a feminized nation, and no one wants to hurt anyone's feelings, and sometimes feelings have to be hurt. I mean, Jesus didn't mind hurting the feelings of the Pharisees at all.
Feminized and politically correct, they seem to sort of describe the same phenomenon, and Trump certainly is not that. Neither is Cruz. Thank you, Eileen. I appreciate that call.
That's an interesting description, too. Bye-bye. I saw Ted Cruz. Donald Trump is a secularized Ted Cruz. I thought, I don't know, that's pretty interesting. It's one way to put it.
And he certainly has just kind of taken the entire political consciousness and kind of grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and woken everybody up. And I kind of appreciate that element of this campaign to kind of break through the wah political discussion that we've had for so long and kind of force people to kind of look at some of the silliness with which we approach these things in terms of political correctness and other things. You can say a whole lot of things, good and bad, about Donald Trump, but at least that kind of jolting reality has been, I think, overall helpful in moving things forward for the discussion.
Yeah. One thing Donald Trump does is he calls people names. In a sense, he's very outspoken that way. And so that, right now that's getting a lot of attention and kind of playing well. But sometimes that doesn't last. You need a little bit more gentlemanly demeanor, I think, to really be a good candidate in the final outcome. Okay, James, I believe, is back from Georgia, so let's go to you. James, thank you for calling in.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. I'm a retired Army veteran, and I'm a Republican. Thank God for all of the candidates. I would vote for Donald Trump based upon the present status quo in Washington, D.C. And so, what he is saying and the way he's saying it, well, that could change, and that's my prayer. At the same time, there needs to be a change in our party because of what has happened over the past years, and I could go on and on. But I would definitely vote for Donald Trump if he's the candidate, and I prayerfully pray that God will, things about his lingo, it would change. At the same time, based upon the candidates now presently running, Ben Carson is another person. I don't think Ted Cruz. I don't think he has the backbone. We need exactly. I don't think Ted Cruz has the backbone. I don't think he is. I don't think he has the backbone. I don't think he. That's my opinion. But again, and if he gets the nomination, definitely, I will financially support and vote for him as well. But at this moment, for what is being said, I think Donald Trump would be the best president for change that America needs. And I pray that God would save his soul. And I thank you for taking my call.
Thank you, James, for calling in. This is what I think speaks for a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's surprising a little bit on the veteran side because I know a lot of veterans are uncomfortable with Trump because of what he said about John McCain, which was obviously not a good thing to say.
Yeah. He does that, though.
Yes,
that's what he does.
But yeah, I think that reflects the sentiment of a lot of people. They're wanting to see somebody who's willing to stand up. Now, I have heard Ted Cruz accused of a lot of things, never not having a backbone.
It's possible that he hurt his backbone though when he was standing for 18 hours on the Senate floor reading Green Eggs and Ham to his kids. So I'm not entirely sure. I agree.
Yeah, he's been willing to shut down the government and incur the wrath of the leadership in the Republican Party. So we'll hear more about that. I want to take another call before the break. Let's go to Wyatt in North Carolina. Hi, Wyatt. Thanks for calling in.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
What do you think? What do you think of Trump, first of all?
Well, I do like some of what Trump is saying. I think the way he says it sometimes does kind of ruffle a lot of people's feathers, if you will. I've been watching Ted Cruz quite a bit. I've seen him in some pretty tough interviews, and I do think he has backbone. Like you say, he's willing to shut the government down. He appears to be a godly man, or believer, if you will. I'm not too sure about Trump. But I do feel whoever we do get to be president does need to be a good, godly man. I'm not sure we have that with Trump. However, Trump has done a good job of stirring everybody up there, and he's got politicians really thinking and rethinking. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the evangelicals are in two camps with regard to Trump. Mm-hmm. They either are really happy he's there, maybe they wouldn't vote for him, or they don't think he'd be the best, but they are happy he's there because he's stirring things up. And then there are some that are wringing their hands. They really worry about the support and how he's leading everywhere.
Yeah, and him saying, the caller saying that it's the way he says it. I think that's exactly why people want to support Trump right now. Is that their voice has not been heard. They're sick of the political speak. They're tired of the political correctness. I think normal people don't talk like politicians, right? They just don't.
Yeah, and he talks like more of a normal person.
He talks like someone you go and have coffee with or some other beverage with. They're just normal people.
He doesn't drink.
Yeah, and he certainly doesn't. He's not exactly normal people either with his gold-plated everything, but he's more like us, if you will, than many other candidates are or have been. I mean, I think of, if you want to put a comparison next to Donald Trump and Mitt Romney, probably of equal wealth to one another, close there too. Trump would be more fun to hang out with than Mitt Romney would be, I would think, personally. I mean, it's someone that I could see myself following this guy just because he's fun. Maybe that says a lot about the electorate right now, but at the same time, maybe there's some other of the candidates should be picking up on some of these cues. Although it is kind of funny to watch some of the candidates try to imitate a Donald Trump, and it doesn't really always work very well.
No, you can't do that.
No, you gotta be yourself.
There is a Reagan-esque part that attracts us: the happiness, the sunny personality, and sort of. In the midst of serious issues, somebody that's carefree enough to speak the truth. And I think that's one thing that people see there.
Yeah, and I think part of it is, like it was kind of referenced, it's entertainment. I mean, people are so into entertainment, and right now, it's very entertaining to watch what goes on. I mean, everybody's like, well, I don't know what's going to happen next. The debate, that Republican debate was like, the record setting. I mean, more people watch that than the Super Bowl. And so I think that's part of that's entertainment. Most people think as you get closer to the serious decision of picking who you really want to be your leader, that the entertainment starts to move out and thinking about things and what it will mean and all that, people's perspective change. But that could be wrong. I mean, they've been wrong about a lot of things they've been saying about this race and about Donald Trump not running at all in the first place. And so, I don't think anybody really knows what's going to happen. I keep wondering, God is doing one of two things, right? He's either bringing Donald Trump in here to change things around, or he's bringing Donald Trump in here to judge, people who haven't been willing to turn things around.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a full bank of phones. We have a long break, so hang on, if you will, or call back, and we will take your calls a little bit later in the program. We'll be back.
From Provident Films and Affirm Films comes War Room. Tony and Elizabeth Jordan's marriage is turning into a battle, and their daughter is caught in the crossfire until Elizabeth meets Miss Clara.
This is my favorite place in this house. I call it my war room.
And learns that prayer is a powerful weapon. War Room. In theaters August 28th. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. More information is available at warroomthemovie.com.
Have you ever wanted to walk where Jesus walked? To stand in places where the Apostle Paul proclaimed the gospel and saw the world and people's lives changed? In May of 2016, you can do just that on a 15-day tour of Israel and Greece with Point of View's very own Kirby Anderson. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to experience the Bible and history in places God chose to begin the spread of his message of grace. Join Kirby and Point of View for Journey to Jerusalem and Journeys of Paul. Learn more by clicking on the banner at pointofview.net. You've read the Bible. Here's a chance to live it. pointofview.net. Point of View will continue after this.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kirby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. Each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Penna Dexter.
And also joined in studio by Kelly Shackelford and Jeremy Dyes from Liberty Institute. It is our Friday weekend edition. And ladies and gentlemen, this week, the Center for Medical Progress released its 7th video. And they're getting progressively more disturbing. This one is taking us right into the heart of Kermit Gosnell territory, really, because we see pictures and descriptions of intact babies and talking about how to get the brain, and the young procurement technologist or whatever who actually has provided so much good information for these shows us when she finally threw in the towel. Because this was just getting so bad. And, of course, these have been educating people across the spectrum, not only just the pro-lifers who we knew that Planned Parenthood was doing horrible things. We didn't know it was this bad. People who thought Planned Parenthood was providing some good things like pap smears out there, which there are other places that can do that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But now we've got members of Congress getting very disturbed about this. Freshman Representative Mia Love of Utah was crying about it on Fox the other day. It was upsetting her so much. Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal has canceled Louisiana Medicaid contracts with Planned Parenthood, and he's also launched a state investigation into their operations. So we've got state governors getting involved. And now people all over the country are going to be rallying before Planned Parenthood clinics tomorrow. So, Jeremy, the other side says, listen, Planned Parenthood does a lot of good. Federal funds don't go toward abortion. They go toward these other, quote unquote, good things Planned Parenthood does. We need Planned Parenthood. What do you say to that?
I say it's a bald-faced lie. Look, and maybe they do have some of the services that they provide, but there are literally tens of thousands of other clinics in this country who provide the exact same services, who I would guess would welcome any bit of $500 million to supplement their good services. Some know that I just moved here from West Virginia a couple months ago, and I know of some of these clinics from a firsthand experience who are battling difficult battles with a huge plague in the Appalachian culture, which is prescription drug abuse. They could use huge assistance with this. The number 2 thing in West Virginia they're dealing with is heart disease and cancer. Boy, I tell you what, those kinds of screenings and the federal dollars that could go to help them out sure could go a long way to help out that little state of West Virginia. And I imagine the same is true here in Texas and across the country. For Planned Parenthood to be kind of holding on to all that is just selfish.
Well, we'll see what our next guest has to say about it. She is Arina Grossu, and she is with the Family Research Council. We're so grateful to have her with us. She's the director of the Center for Human Dignity there. And Arina, I know that FRC and lots of other groups are organizing rallies before Planned Parenthoods across the nation taking place tomorrow, aren't you?
Yes, thank you for having me, Penna. There are over 300 cities right now that are holding protest rallies tomorrow between 9 and 11 a.m. local time, and in 47 states and 4 countries already as well. And so we're asking people to really take part, that this isn't just something that we're dealing with inside the Beltway, that this is something that every single person who watches these videos and is outraged by what's going on behind closed doors at Planned Parenthood can get involved and put pressure on their local Planned Parenthood, on their local representatives,
And really, every single state should start doing an investigation of Planned Parenthood. And at the federal level, we need to defund Planned Parenthood and redirect that money to the tens of thousands of women's health clinics that are much more comprehensive than Planned Parenthood can ever offer.
Arina, does Family Research Council have a list of where these rallies are being held? Or any way for people to find out?
Yes. People can go to protestpp.com, and there is a list of every single protest going on. And if there isn't one near you, you can still organize one. It's kind of last minute, but there are over 300 cities that are already involved. So protestpp.com, they'll get all the information for their local Planned Parenthood rally.
Right.
Arina, this is Kelly Shackelford. My question is, I bet everybody wants to have it kind of laid out for them. It seems like everybody's disgusted about what they're seeing in the videos, and the idea that these groups are getting taxpayer money is something that obviously should stop. But explain to us, where does the federal connection, where is the state connection? Is this something that obviously should be done in Congress, but if Congress doesn't do it, can your state legislature do anything? What are the options that are available?
It needs to be done on both ends. So at the federal level, coming up in the fall, we are hoping that another defund Planned Parenthood bill will come up. The last one was short by 5 to 7 votes. We had 2 Democrats who also voted to defund Planned Parenthood. So really, we were 5 to 7 votes away from it passing in the Senate. So at the federal level, this needs to happen, and they need to start a federal investigation of Planned Parenthood in general. I'm also happy that 13 states have already announced investigations of their Planned Parenthood, and five of those states have defunded Planned Parenthood. So definitely write to your Attorney General, call your Attorney General, write and call to your governor, and this has to happen both at the state level and at the federal level, and we need everyone involved because this is the proportions of the human rights abuses that are going on can be compared more specifically to the way that we cannot do the same thing and stand idly by as people did during slavery or during Nazi Germany, and the human rights abuses are at that level.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of sentiment across the country, Arina. I'm glad you're channeling it tomorrow, and of course this has to be something that people stay on and really becomes also an issue because we've been talking presidential politics today in those races, doesn't it?
Oh, most certainly, and we have to see, especially with the Republican candidates, where do they really stand on this, and are they really going to take action? Is it just words? I mean, if this doesn't enrage you, and if you call yourself pro-life, then this is the very first thing that you should be focused on in terms of life issues.
Okay, Arina Grossu, Family Research Council. Listen, Arina, thank you for all the work you do on this issue. We really appreciate you and everybody at FRC.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's Arina Grossu. And again, let me give the website. It's protestpp.com. protestpp.com. You can find out if there's a rally near you, and it would be a great day to go out and express your opinion and take your friends. I don't think the media can ignore this one, hopefully. They try.
And to say that it is affecting the political campaigns, presidential campaigns, is exactly accurate. I think yesterday the debate was about this term, anchor baby, and President or Mrs. Clinton, Secretary Clinton said to Donald Trump, "It's a baby." If you're looking for another word, it's a baby. To which I think Mike Huckabee was the one that responded with, "Hey, Secretary Clinton, have you seen the videos? It's a baby."
Thank you, Mike Huckabee. Yeah, very good. Touche. Ladies and gentlemen, we are taking your calls, 800-351-1212. The question on the table really is, could you or would you support Donald Trump? Do you support Donald Trump as the Republican nominee? If you think that this is sort of a phenomenon that will flame out and somebody else will move in to take his place, who do you think that person would be and why? That's what we are talking about. Some people are concerned also about a third party. And, that is something else. I mean, Megyn Kelly in that first debate tried to get Donald Trump to commit not to run independently, and he would not commit that. And I think that's behind the big fight between those two. Anyway, we'll be back. And Andrew, okay.
With Kirby Anderson.
We'll be right back.
A few decades ago, marriages were the foundation of what many commentators referred to as the traditional family. Now, marriages and families are taking some very unfamiliar shapes and orientations due to different views of marriage and family. Americans are not exactly sure what to think about these dramatic changes in marriage and family. On the one hand, they believe that marriage and family are very important. One survey found that readers actually rated their relationship to their spouse as the single most important factor in their personal happiness. On the other hand, Americans are much less sanguine about other people's marriages and families. I call this the Lake Wobegon effect, where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and all the children are above average. In other words, their marriage and family are fine, but the rest of the marriages and families are not. The Mass Mutual Family Value Study found that a majority pointed to their family as the greatest source of pleasure, but it also found that a majority rated the family in the United States as only fair or poor. Almost 6 in 10 expected it to get worse in the next 10 years. The survey came to the same conclusion I mentioned earlier. It said, quote, Americans seem to see the family in decline everywhere but in their own home, unquote. Similar results have been found in many other nationwide polls. A Gallup poll found that Americans believe that the family is worse off today than it was 10 years ago, and they believe that it would be worse off in the future. This belief that the future will be worse than the present appears to be true not only for the family, but for other social issues as well. So while most Americans feel good about their own marriage and family, they're concerned about other marriages and families as well. Perhaps their own experience is closer to reality. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Prayer is a powerful weapon. From Provident Films and Affirm Films comes War Room in theaters August 28. Rated PG. More information at warroomthemovie.com.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
We are taking your calls, 800-351-1212. GOP candidate Donald Trump made some remarks about Planned Parenthood and its funding. And he said, after all, PP, Planned Parenthood, is worthwhile, except for the murder part. This happened on August 11th. He said he would look at the good aspects of Planned Parenthood before defunding the organization entirely. He also said a week before that he would strip Planned Parenthood of federal funding. So I'm not sure what he would do, but even those remarks are telling. And that's really kind of what the Democrats say. They say, yes, they do abortions, but people don't have to pay for abortions with their tax money because that money goes to all the other, quote-unquote, good things Planned Parenthood does, the testing, etc. And as Jeremy said, there are many clinics out there who do these things. Planned Parenthood is almost given this monopoly by the federal government because of the amount of money given. So perhaps we should let the free market work in these clinics.
Absolutely.
What about Ben Carson? Because he's another candidate out there who is talking the pro-life talk, and yet there are a few little chinks in his armor, Kelly.
Yeah, the last week or so, there's been a lot of articles and things, certainly on his statements about using, for instance, the material of babies and his justifying that. And anyway, obviously the statements don't make people in the pro-life community very uncomfortable and don't feel like that he's solid on that as they thought he was. So I know that's been a little bit of a controversy this week.
Yeah. Yeah, Ben Carson, he's done these fantastic surgeries to save babies and little tiny babies and all of that. And so you almost assume he's pro-life because of that, because he dedicated his whole career to that. But there was the issue of body parts used for research, and his role in that. And he said simply because he wasn't part of obtaining those body parts, that made it okay. But I'm just not so sure about that.
You know, I'll give him something of a benefit of a doubt on that. Novice to the political world, still trying to figure this whole thing out. Maybe he stumbled, had a bad night of sleep. I don't know. There's just a lot of things that could have gone wrong to have that kind of a rather stupid statement on things. But I think it also it does speak to kind of how entrenched within the medical community that Planned Parenthood has inserted itself. That they've been able to, not only the medical community but also the journalist community and others, where they have been able to convince that this is how you must behave. This is what you must believe in order to be in this field. And I think this is off the topic, but I think of our client, Dr. Eric Walsh, who can't get a job in public health because of his religious positions and having been fired from a job on that front. You know, unless you believe a certain orthodoxy, you're not welcome into this club. And I think that probably influenced Dr. Carson more than he would even admit.
It could be. It very well could be. We are taking your calls, 800-351-1212. Lots of people have been waiting a long time. Let's go to Bill in the state of Florida. Hi, Bill. Thanks for calling in.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Do you have your radio on? Because we can barely hear you.
No, I'm on a 18-wheeler.
Okay.
I'm on
all right. Yeah, just
Bluetooth,
make sure you talk right into the phone.
Okay. Well, that's on a Bluetooth. But anyway, briefly, Donald Trump, at this point in time, I would not support him. If he won the candidacy, I'd have no choice.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a history buff. I look at his history. He doesn't have any firm, solid beliefs. He changes from day to day. His business adventures, his investors lose their shirt that Donald Trump makes a profit. So I believe from watching him, he's a showman. He's a salesman. He's selling us what we want to hear right now. If he doesn't get that nomination, I believe he's going to go third party and pull voters away from the Republican candidate. The thing that concerns me most is the media. If we look at the liberal-controlled media over the last two elections and this one coming up now, they have fed us a daily diet of a moderate candidate that they knew they could beat. John McCain is so moderate it was almost impossible to tell his position from the Democrats. They turned around and did the same thing with Mitt Romney. Now we're doing this. They're feeding me Donald Trump every day, even though Ted Cruz has been saying the same kind of things for years. He doesn't get the coverage. We're getting Jeb Bush and Donald Trump because they're two moderates that I believe the liberal media would love to see us put up there. As for Dr. Carson, we've been donating parts from cadavers to science for years, and I don't really have a problem with that. There's a big difference between donating the body parts and selling body parts and endangering women's lives and health in order to make a profit from selling those body parts. That's my real problem with Planned Parenthood. And I'll shut up and let you guys take it from here.
Well, you covered it all, Bill. Thank you very much. We appreciate your call.
I'll be listening on the air. Thank you.
Kelly, he brings up the third party part of it, and that is a concern.
Well, certainly at that point, everybody will know that Donald Trump wasn't really ever about being the Republican nominee if that were to happen. Because when you do that, you're assuring really the loss of the election. But I do think I saw something in one of the articles about Donald Trump today that I thought, that is very interesting. It said in there that Donald Trump has never referred to himself as a conservative. And I thought, well, that is interesting. I don't know if I've been paying attention to that during these, debate or appearances or rallies or Q&A at the media, because he, spends he'll answer every question. He's very opposite of Hillary Clinton. And that is interesting. Does he consider himself a conservative? Does he refer to himself as a conservative even? I don't know. I don't know what he would call himself. But
he's been for single payer health care, and he still hasn't fully pulled himself back off of that.
Yep.
and he calls himself a businessman. And I think some people would equate those two, conservative and businessman, but it isn't necessarily the same.
And so I think I think we've got a great mix of callers. We've got people who call in and say, I would support him. I mean, we've got to do something. We need, this is one of those times where you've got to have somebody willing to shake everything up and turn the country in a completely different direction. So we need something really stark. And then you've got people like just called and said, well, I'm not going to support him. This is a showman that doesn't really believe anything. He's saying what. So I think you see both of those really responses to the Trump phenomenon in the Republican Party.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And when things are going so kind of mundane and we're just kind of being weighed down by a government that just doesn't listen to its constituents and citizens anymore, you got to have somebody kind of willing to raise their arms and wave them over their head and say, "Hold on, wake up." Someone's got to be a little bit on the crazy side just to kind of wake everybody up from the listlessness that we find ourselves in. So at the end of the day, does a marketer like Donald Trump get into the office? I have a hard time seeing it, but at the same time, who are we talking about? We're talking about Donald Trump.
Right.
So he's at least figured out a very good argument to be able to, a very good way to present things that gets you heard. Other candidates should take listen to all that. And I'll just add on to that, Bill, drive safely down there, buddy.
Donald Trump is taking up to a quarter of the vote in many polls of the support. And, of course, as we said earlier, there are lots of candidates in there. That changes when the number of candidates hones down. You've got people gravitating towards various candidates. Still, that's a huge number of votes. That's a lot of support. I tend to see a lot of it as very, very solid and not backing off, especially these new people who are just frustrated, but they haven't been watching politics and they're not sort of seasoned. I don't know whether you call it seasoned or jaded. I think a lot of those people will not leave Donald Trump, and it could be a spoiler. Who knows? We are taking your calls, 800-351-1212. Also, after the break, let's talk a little bit about the Democrat side because, Hillary's got her problems, and now we're seeing this whole Joe Biden floating going on. And, some people, Joe Biden is sort of the gaffe-prone crazy uncle, but when you have a Donald Trump in the race, Joe Biden seems tame next to that.
Now, there's a debate. Joe Biden versus Donald Trump.
Yeah. Ted Cruz versus Hillary, I think, would be a very interesting debate. And I think Ted Cruz would win those debates because he's a great debater, and she's really not. Now, Joe Biden and Donald Trump would be, that would definitely be a circus.
No doubt.
800-351-1212. We are taking your calls. Again, we appreciate the callers today because, as Kelly said, they're kind of everywhere with regard to their support for Donald Trump, and you're making the show today, and we've got a lot more. If you are calling in and you have not been able to get through, just keep trying. We're going to really try to devote the rest of the show to your calls and discussion of these issues. So stay with us for more of Point of View. We'll be right back.
There is a big incentive to pay your electric bill. If you don't, you find yourself in the dark. But who pays to make sure you're educated on the key issues of the day, to bring you wisdom for life at work, at home, and in the culture, like you hear from guests here on Point of View? Who makes sure that our electric bill gets paid? You're way ahead of me, aren't you? That's right. You do. The truth is, if every listener this week gave just $5, we could pay our bills for about the next 3 years. Did you hear me? $5, 3 years. Now, perhaps you can give more. How about $50 or $500, maybe even more? But please, don't be the one who fails to send at least $5. Click the Donate Now button at pointofview.net, pointofview.net, or send $5 to Point of View, Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Box 30, Dallas 75221. Whatever amount you chip in, thank you for your gift. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Penna Dexter.
And Kelly Shackelford and Jeremy Dyes. This is our weekend edition. I've been asking you to call in about Donald Trump, but I do want to talk about the Democrat side a little bit. A Quinnipiac poll says Joe Biden compares favorably to Hillary Clinton in swing states. He matches up as well or better than Hillary Clinton against top 2016 Republicans in 3 swing states, according to this poll released Thursday morning. That's certain to fuel speculation of the former 6-term senator entering the White House race. Hillary is still the front runner for Democratic primary voters in Florida, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. And Donald Trump leads among the GOP, says this survey. But both of them, Trump and Hillary, have the worst favorability ratings and trustworthiness scores of the featured candidates. And I think, Jeremy, those start to make a difference a little bit more as we move along.
They certainly do, and they certainly start to impact exactly how people are portraying themselves, who's the perceived front runner, and all these things in the media that kind of comes with all of that. So these polls are helpful to a point, but they then kind of get back to the wah-wah of politics, which I think most people are just kind of sick of hearing. They just want to see, okay, what are you going to actually do? And don't tell me you're going to do the same thing we've been experiencing and just dress it up in a different way. I don't want that anymore.
Yeah, people don't want that anymore. We're taking your calls, talking about Trump and also who would inherit Trump's people if he flames out. Scott is in Oklahoma. Hi, Scott. Thank you for calling.
Hello, Penna. How are you doing?
Great. How are you?
How about you, Kelly? And I know I got the other guy's name mixed up last week, so
Jeremy.
I'm not going to... Jeremy. Okay, let me tell you what I think about Trump. I think he's good for the system. I would vote for him against Jeb Bush because Jeb Bush wants to do the Common Core, and he's actually, I think I heard somebody say, he said on a program that he would implement, he was speaking to a Spanish-speaking audience, the Obama amnesty plan. Now, that cannot go. But
he's for a path to citizenship. I think I would call him an amnesty candidate.
Okay,
he
yeah,
definitely has always highlighted his, for instance, he's got a wife who's Hispanic. He's always highlighted his openness to immigration, as his brother did. So I think that's where he is, and he has not, as others like Scott Walker have done, he has not pulled back on that.
Okay, but the person I called about was I was going to back up Ted Cruz's backbone as if he needed any backing up at all. You know, I'll tell you what, it took a lot of backbone guts to get up there in front of the Senate and tell all the members everything. They already knew what he said was true, that Mitch McConnell lied to them. And Mitch McConnell knew he lied to them. And he was just pointing out that took a lot of backbone. But I also want you to remember when he ran for a campaign in Texas, he came out number 2 in the primary. So they had a runoff. But as much money as the establishment poured into for his candidate, he actually won by a bigger margin, if you remember, than he would have if it was a close race. It was not a close race when the two met again.
No, you're right. It was and he was, his opponent spent $20 million of his own money, and Ted was outspent many times over in that race.
And his opponent was the sitting lieutenant governor of Texas.
With great name ID. So what happened there was really miraculous. I don't think anybody really thought, maybe not even Ted when he started, that that was going to happen, but he felt like he was supposed to do that. So, yeah, you're right. That's a pretty big feat. And so I guess it takes that sort of confidence to run for president and actually think you got a chance to win. And he certainly handled it well. I mean, the way a lot of these articles this week talked about it, they said that he kind of started out well, he kind of drifted back to about number 7 or so, and then after the debate, he moved up to number 3. What the article sort of referenced to, and I think that's true, is a lot of these people have never seen Ted Cruz. They've never seen him in person, like in an interview, on a debate or anything. But they're always being told, because he's the one standing up against his own party in these situations, that he's unlikable, he's kind of hard to get along with, he's, those kind of things. And so people saw him in the debate. He actually had the least amount of time in the debate than every other candidate except for Rand Paul. But yet he rose the greatest in that debate. And I really think it's not because he did anything great. He's a good debater. He's, a very bright guy. I think it's because people, when they see him, they realize, hey, he's not the monster they created, the unlikable guy. He's seems like a pretty good guy. And so I think that's how he sort of jumped up after that. And I think that's the same reason that people saw Ben Carson and they thought, I kind of like this guy. And so the likability is important. Donald Trump is he's hard to figure out because he's funny and he's entertaining, but I don't know that likable by a lot of people. So he's just a phenomenon of his own at this point.
They just like his hair. He's just got good hair.
That must be it.
But I would like to say one more thing that's not complimentary to Ted Cruz. It's something that San Antonio said yesterday on the Hannity program, that Ted Cruz was highly favorable to having these H-1 visas. I think they're work visas. I'm not sure, okay?
H-1B.
H-1B. And that kind of disturbed me because I know for a fact that Disney World fired a lot of their American workers, and in order for them to get their severance pay, they had to train incoming, and now most of those were from India, I believe. And so that kind of disturbed me. I called his office today, but I didn't get a response. I haven't checked my email box lately because I left my email box. But that did kind of disturb me a little bit. But
we need to do a little research into the issue. I think the H-1B visa is for technological workers.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right, too. But that did disturb me a little bit, too, because I think American workers don't need to be replaced. But even though that, he's still, in my opinion, far above every other candidate. They always say they pile on Trump. He's never done it once that I know of. I mean, at least they would have mentioned it for sure in the mainstream media. But he hadn't jumped on his case once when he was asked about it. I think that's a good commentary for Ted Cruz.
All right, thank you, Scott. We appreciate your call.
And we might have the conspiracies out there that there's something going behind the scenes with Ted Cruz and Donald Trump or something. I think Senator Cruz is just a nice guy. And he doesn't go hard after people. He goes after their ideas. And I think he's probably taken on Donald Trump's side. Exactly. He goes hard after their ideas.
He makes it a point not to.
Yeah. And that's refreshing today, right? We don't see that very much. We're sitting in Texas where the game of politics has become you don't just lose, you go to jail. Right, that's a different type of political environment than we face right now. Look, this issue of immigration is going to affect everybody, but it's going to be over. We're talking about it right now because it's been occupying the discussion for the last week and a half. There's a whole lot more in this world than the issue of immigration. As important as that is, there's a whole lot more that we've got to find out about candidates before we put them into the White House.
Absolutely. Just back to the idea of bashing other candidates, I find that if you have a brilliant intellect, it gives you the opportunity to be able to have plenty to talk about and good arguments to make where you don't have to do that. And that's one of the advantages that Ted Cruz has. He debated since he was a kid, so he knows how. And he's so bright that he's able to make statements that just make so much sense. It's sort of convincing, kind of a bully. I think he'll be a bully pulpit president if he is one. He will be able to bring the country along on certain things because of that intellect that he was blessed
He'll
with.
be a bully pulpit without being a bully.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that's interesting about what you said, Penna, is the debate. The people who did, the two who got response-wise afterwards when they went back and they asked how everybody did polling all across the country, the two that were at the very bottom were Chris Christie and Rand Paul because they went after each other. I mean, I don't think that's a coincidence. So that's exactly right. I mean, it was somewhat entertaining, but I think most people didn't like it. Although we love, hey, that was a good point, but the average American that looks at that doesn't. So there's a way to do it Ronald Reagan way, which is with a smile, with your positive points and those things rather than, and even when you're going to, cut them down, you use a line like he used about, I'm not going to take advantage of my candidate's youth and inexperience, when they were trying to use the age against him. Just a very, you can't help but smile type of thing. That's a much better approach.
A quick wit.
Exactly.
Yeah, that and Chris Christie is Donald Trump without the personal jet.
Okay. 800-351-1212. We are taking your calls. We'll continue to do so for the final segment. Wow, I hope we can get a lot in because we still have a full bank of phones. This has been sort of a hot button today. I think people are really starting to get engaged in the campaign. And we've got about 5 months to go before Iowa and then New Hampshire hit. And then things will really start moving. And I think the way we can talk about this a little bit, Kelly, the way things are lining up this time. Candidates need to be ready and they need to have money now as never before.
Mm-hmm.
We will be right back after these messages. Stay with us for more of Point of View.
The release of videos by the Center for Medical Progress exposing Planned Parenthood's participation in the trafficking of baby body parts warrants criminal investigation. The Heritage Foundation summed it up by pointing out 3 ways in which Planned Parenthood may be violating the law. First, we must ask, is Planned Parenthood receiving too much money in exchange for the body parts of unborn children? Planned Parenthood spokespersons say that any payment the organization receives for fetal tissue is reimbursement for what they do to process and transport it. If the organization receives compensation in excess of actual costs, it's illegal. But the videos of conversations with Planned Parenthood officials indicate its desire to maximize revenue. With one doctor taped joking, "I want a Lamborghini." The second question the Heritage Foundation asks is, do Planned Parenthood affiliate doctors change abortion procedures in order to better collect tissue from aborted children? Again, it is illegal to do this, and there are lots of statements that suggest this is happening in these videos. In the first one, Dr. Deborah Nucatola, Planned Parenthood's Senior Director for Medical Services, says of this practice, "So then, you're just kind of cognizant of where you put your graspers, and I'm going to see if I can get it all intact." Related to this is another question. Are some Planned Parenthood affiliates performing illegal partial birth abortions? This involves partially delivering the baby either head first or breech, and then killing the child before final delivery. Partial birth abortion is illegal in the United States. The law that makes it illegal was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court. But partial birth abortion allows the abortionist to deliver an intact body for research. There were several mentions in the videos of Planned Parenthood's ability to meet these requests and also provide larger parts like the calvarium or head. Dr. Nucatola told the Center for Medical Progress that when a baby's head is requested, some Planned Parenthood doctors turn the baby for a breech presentation, providing it a better chance that it will not be damaged during the abortion. Obviously, this is dangerous to the mother and is in violation of the law. If Planned Parenthood is doing these things, all states and our federal government should stop funding it. The organization famously claims that only 3% of its health services are abortion services. Even the Washington Post gave this claim 3 Pinocchios, saying Planned Parenthood is misleading the public and using meaningless and incomplete comparisons to make their argument. Planned Parenthood comes up with this claim by unbundling all of its services except abortion. Planned Parenthood clinics provide things like pap smears, birth control prescriptions, testing for sexually transmitted infections, vaccines for human papillomavirus. Several may be provided in one appointment, but they are counted as separate services. Everything associated with the abortion is counted as one service. Taxpayers should not be made to fund this charade. For Point of View, I'm Penna Dexter.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Well, I said I'd try to get all the calls in, so let's get started. Let's go now to West Virginia and speak with Pamela. Hi, Pamela. Thanks for calling in. We're talking to another fellow West Virginian.
Yes, I heard that. That's kind of cool. You were asking who my pick would be. My pick has been, since he announced that he was going into the race, Ted Cruz. I don't know how anybody could say that that man does not have backbone. I've heard some of his speeches, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. However, we're dealing with the American people, so who knows? I could vote for Mr. Trump, especially if he was running against Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. Do you think Trump could end up being a spoiler, though, as a third-party candidate?
I pray that he doesn't do that. Of course, he has money, so he can kind of do whatever he wants. I would rather see him possibly get the nomination and pull someone onto him, like for vice president or something like Ted Cruz or Ben Carson.
That would be an interesting combination.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Pamela.
And
You're
Pamela,
welcome.
And Pamela, Montani Semper Liberi, my friend.
Thank you.
There's all that West Virginia talk.
Yeah, West Virginia's. Hey, take me home, country roads.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, thank you, guys.
And, we mentioned this earlier, Penna, but there is a rally tonight in Iowa, a religious liberty rally, where all these people that people have heard, they've heard probably every one of these people talked about on Point of View, all these different, the Kleins from Oregon who've, gone bankrupt and have been sued because they were Christian, and bakers, but they wouldn't bake the lesbian wedding cake. And anyway, all the different famous cases, including Sergeant Monk. And some people are thinking, well, hey, if I'm in Iowa, I think I'll go out and do that. But I'm pretty sure that it's going to be streamed all over where people can watch it.
The Iowa State Fair?
It's near the Iowa State Fair. I don't know exactly where it's being hosted, but I've heard they're going to live stream it or do something where people can watch. So that is something that people could. I don't think that's ever been done, where we've had all these different people we've heard about that have been together, at one time, where they've each told their story. So I hope that the press covers that, because I think that will lead to more coverage and more people understanding what's going on.
I hope so, too. Everybody needs to be looking for that, ladies and gentlemen, for the coverage of the Religious Liberty Rally. It really, it is basically one of the top-tier campaign issues, but most of the candidates aren't acknowledging it now.
Yeah, and think about it. There's a good slate of people that are going to be there to talk about this, but this is the tip of the iceberg.
That's right.
I mean, these are really cases that are almost over, maybe in process, but there are a lot of cases out there right now that are going to, depending on how they turn out, they'll shape the future of this country.
Yeah, you mentioned Little Sisters of the Poor earlier, and that's the case over Obamacare and the HHS mandate and all of that, which was basically won by Hobby Lobby, but they're a nonprofit. And to me, it's one of the best showcase type cases when you have a bunch of nuns who are being forced by the federal government to provide contraception that causes abortion.
Yeah, and you got an administration who will not give up on this issue. They are dead set in making sure that people are required to provide chemicals that will induce abortion. They are dead set on it. I mean, the Hobby Lobby case won it for-profit corporations. They still had to go after nonprofit organizations. We represent denominationally affiliated nonprofits, religious ministries. Their denomination in their church is exempt, but the ministries who have to abide by the faith and doctrine of that denomination, they're not exempt.
Because they're not a church.
This is bizarro world. I mean, this is crazy that we're talking about, but this is exactly the intent of this administration to make sure that is the case. In a consideration for the next elected president has got to be this issue. Are they going to use the power of the federal bureaucracy for good or for ill?
We've talked about this so many times, Kelly, about how religious people and Christians are in the way of the left's agenda. We are just really, sometimes we're the only group standing against it, because we have, even if we feel like we can't win or nobody thinks we can, we don't care, because we know we have God and we're standing for his principles. And whether we win or we lose, we know God is, he's the one that we have to obey, and he will have our back. And if we lose, he'll have our back. If we win, he'll help us win. And so that is that's the battle. It's really a battle between good and evil.
Well, and the unique thing about our country is that it's like we read in Scripture, pray for the king, or honor the king. We are the king in this country. We decide who will be the leader. We make those decisions, and we're literally being given the opportunity to make the decision as to whether we'll have religious freedom. I mean, the next president is going to appoint maybe 2 justices, maybe 3. And so it's going to make a difference. As I was driving in to do the show today, I heard on a national show, it was kind of one of these little quick news clips, and it said, Ted Cruz just said, here are the 5 things he will do on the first day in office. And I don't remember all of them, but number 3 was, he said and they played the quote, and he said, the third thing I will do is on the first day in office, I will send a message to every federal bureaucracy in the country that says the attacks on religious freedom are over. And he went on in that. So you hear things like Jeremy's talked about, HHS mandate. Oh, they're done. Now, would every Republican candidate maybe do that? I don't know. I hope so. Would any of the Democratic candidates?
Then he said they were going to do it, though.
Well, that's right. But I'm like, let's hear what they're going to do. Let's commit people to this, because that is a really important thing. And there's never a hope for redemption in our country if there's not the ability to speak the truth that will change people's lives and change the country. And so this is ultimately the issue that affects all other issues, is the freedom of people to share the truth and the Savior that can change their lives.
I would love to see a reporter ask the candidates in a debate a question about religious liberty.
It was the number one thing on this poll, and yet they haven't asked it yet. So we'll see. I hope that people can get. I don't know how easy it is to find the rally tonight, like on the internet or whatever. But I hope it's easy to find, and I hope people will share it around the country with other people. All these stories are really compelling, and as Jeremy said, this is just like 8 stories out of 1,600 attacks on religious liberty that have been published.
I wonder if the Cruz campaign will actually have it.
I bet they will. I bet they will.
Let's take another quick call. Louis is in Illinois. Hi, Louis.
Hello, this is Louis. I like to say about this Donald Trump thing. I think we need to pray for him.
You think?
Amen.
He needs God in his life.
Yeah, he does. He said he'd never needed forgiveness for anything, or he'd never asked.
He needs Jesus in his life.
No doubt.
Okay, Louis, thank you. Yeah, we
Good
should
reminder.
pray for Donald Trump. That's a good reminder. And also, we should be praying right now for this election.
Mm-hmm.
We need to pray for wisdom that we, as a country, will select a good person that will bring good and not evil to the nation.
Absolutely. I mean, this is one of the things it's so frustrating to watch is in the past elections, half of those who believe in the Bible and go to church, half of those people are registered. And half of those people are registered to vote. Oh. And so it really, the future of the country is in the hands of people who know the truth. It's just a matter of whether they will be good stewards with what the Lord has given them and what people have literally died to give us. And so it's something that I hope there's a change all across the country and people do take it seriously and really, I think more and more people are waking up. I think a lot of people thought, I'm just going to raise my family. I'm just going to, somebody else will take care of that. I think more and more people are realizing, you know what? I can't afford to do that anymore.
I'm the somebody. Kelly and Jeremy, thank you so much for being with me today.
It's great.
Andrew, thank you very much for everything you did. Also, Catherine and Chris. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. And for all the callers that made the program fun today, have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
From Provident Films and Affirm Films comes War Room. Tony and Elizabeth Jordan's marriage is turning into a battle, and their daughter is caught in the crossfire until Elizabeth meets Miss Clara.
This is my favorite place in this house. I call it my war room.
And learns that prayer is a powerful weapon. War Room. In theaters August 28th. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. More information is available at warroomthemovie.com.
Have you ever wanted to walk where Jesus walked? To stand in places where the Apostle Paul proclaimed the gospel and saw the world and people's lives changed? In May of 2016, you can do just that on a 15-day tour of Israel and Greece with Point of View's very own Kirby Anderson. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to experience the Bible and history in places God chose to begin the spread of his message of grace. Join Kirby and Point of View for Journey to Jerusalem and Journeys of Paul. Learn more by clicking on the banner at pointofview.net. You've read the Bible, here's a chance to live it. pointofview.net. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.